Trump's now being hit by Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Dave Smith over a US attack on Iran, with some of his allies and fans now calling for him to be impeached. Also, is the Israel-Iran situation spiraling out of control? Netanyahu wants a war-ending weapon that only the United States has, and Trump might be the first president that's actually willing to hand it over. And we need to talk about how a man with a hit list killed 2 Democrats, but then right-wing influencers and senators still tried to sell him as a leftist assassin, because this is just gonna keep getting worse. We're jumping into all that and much more on today's brand new extra-large Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, starting with this. The Israel-Iran situation, it's just getting worse, and now you have the world waiting to see what Donald Trump is gonna do. Right? Is he gonna get the deal that he claimed he would? Will he just stay out of it, or will the US get involved in another war in the Middle East? And while I have my opinions on how this is gonna play out based off of the things that we're seeing right now, the truth is we truly just don't know yet. But to first at least fully understand the question at hand, I mean, we gotta talk about what has exactly happened so far, what Israel's aims are, and why one of those aims may not be possible without the help of the United States. Right, so where we should start is where things kicked off last Friday, when you had Israel starting attacking nuclear and military facilities across Iran, as well as assassinating top military commanders and nuclear scientists, with Israeli PM Netanyahu saying that Israel had discovered an imminent threat requiring preemptive action, with him specifically saying that new intelligence indicated that Iran was on the verge of turning its fuel stockpile into weapons. So then with that, we saw Israel expanding its campaign beyond obvious military and nuclear targets, with them taking aim at energy infrastructure, manufacturing, aviation facilities, and even the headquarters of Iran's state broadcaster. And with that, you first had Israeli military issuing an evacuation order to residents of a large area of Tehran. And actually, in that part of the city, you had a news anchor being live on the air when an explosion shook the building, with then other videos and images from the scene showing the building on fire. And then you had the Israeli military later saying in a statement that its Air Force struck the building to target what it called a communication center being used by the Iranian military, quote, under the guise of civilian activity. A claim that I'll say could not be independently verified. But either way there, with Tehran continuing to come under fire, the death toll is reportedly rising to at least 450, and we've just seen more and more people fleeing, with traffic massively backing up on the main highway heading out of the city. And of course, as that's playing out, we're seeing Iran doing its best to retaliate, launching wave after wave of missiles at Israel. And while many have fallen short or been intercepted, there's also been a lot of damage and at least 24 killed. And with that, I'll say, notably here, at least as of recording, Israel's ability to provide civilians with a 15 to 30-minute warning ahead of incoming Iranian strikes, which it had been doing since the start of the conflict, it's reportedly been limited. Right? And while it's not clear yet why, you had at least one Israeli officer recommending that people spend the night in shelters or close to a safe space. And then, regarding the back and forth back in Iran, you had Israel today carrying out even more airstrikes against drone and missile infrastructure, including launchers in the western part of the country. And that is, they're also claiming to have killed the man described as the most senior military commander in Iran, though notably he had only been in his job for about 4 days after Iran's supreme leader appointed him to replace the predecessor who was killed by Israel on Friday. Also, regarding the strikes, we're now learning that an Israeli attack against an Iranian nuclear facility last Friday may have actually done more damage than initially thought, with the UN nuclear watchdog today saying that it had identified direct impacts on the underground enrichment halls, while it had only at first been able to identify above ground damage. So in some ways, you have experts saying that it doesn't really matter either way. Right? And that because even if Israel obliterated the facility that got mentioned there, the Fordo nuclear site would still be left standing. Right? And that it's Iran's most heavily fortified nuclear site, built deep inside of a mountain, and it holds the country's most advanced centrifuges. And notably with that, Israel could potentially slow down the ability of the facility to keep enriching uranium by attacking power generation and transmission plants that help run the facility. But to actually destroy it, only the US has a bomb that may be capable of doing so. Right? And that bomb, it is 20 feet long and 30,000 pounds, meaning that only the American B-2 stealth bomber can carry it. And even then, besides directly involving an American pilot and crew in the war, it wouldn't be easy. Because any attack on Fordo, it would reportedly have to come in waves, with B-2s releasing one bomb after another down the same hole. Plus, you're looking at the potential of nuclear contamination that could endanger civilians. And then of course, all that, it's just in addition to the possibility that Iran's just gonna then retaliate directly against US troops and other American targets in the region and beyond. And notably, regarding the bunker busters, Netanyahu has pressed the US for years to make them available. I mean, we're talking since the Bush administration, but the United States has always refused, fearing that it would encourage Israel to start a war with Iran. But now that Israel has one and started a war anyways, the idea that Trump might break that precedent, it seems like a real possibility. Right? And so far, Trump has only made it clear that the US would not hesitate to use force against Iran if it attacked any US targets. And he's moving fighter jets and refueling aircraft to the region just in case, but also his rhetoric has been getting more and more aggressive and less focused on striking a deal. Right? Yesterday, for example, you had him freaking everyone out a bit when he wrote on social media that everyone should immediately evacuate Iran, with him also saying Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, which is an all-cap sentiment that he repeated in other tweets. And notably, that's also a statement that came from G7 leaders, though theirs in lowercase. And that specific statement also also calling Iran the principal source of regional instability and terror and reiterating Israel's right to defend itself. With him then, after that, calling for broader de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East, including a ceasefire in Gaza, but then stopping short of calling for a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And then with all that, you had Trump making headlines for leaving the G7 summit early, with him also angrily responding to comments by French President Emmanuel Macron that it was to work on a ceasefire, writing on social media, "Wrong, he has no idea why I'm now on my way to Washington," saying that the real reason for his abrupt departure was much bigger than a ceasefire. With him then also writing on social media today that he has not reached out to Iran for peace talks in any way, shape, or form, and saying if they want to talk, they know how to reach me. And then just a few hours later, he posted, "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but it is safe there. We are not going to take him out. Kill, at least not for now. We don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin." And then in a separate post, he simply said, "Unconditional surrender." And now you even have J.D. Vance hinting at the possibility of U.S. involvement, with him writing on X, "Trump may decide he needs to take further action to end Iranian enrichment. That decision ultimately belongs to the president," and adding, "I can assure you that he is only interested in using the American military to accomplish the American people's goals. Whatever he does, that is his focus." And all that, as you notably have the likes of people like Senator Lindsey Graham saying if diplomacy is not successful, he will urge President Trump to go all in to make sure that when this operation is over, there's nothing left standing in Iran regarding their nuclear program.
If that means providing bombs, provide bombs. If that means
busting bombs,
whatever bombs. If it means flying with Israel, fly with Israel.
Though there, I'll say Republicans are hardly united in that view. And now we're actually seeing some working with Democrats to pass a measure that would require congressional approval before U.S. troops could engage in offensive attacks against Iran. Right? And then with all of that, we're now seeing a ton of revolt and division from within the MAGA ranks, with many actually slamming Trump and arguing that his actions will get the U.S. drawn into a foreign war despite his vow to stop all wars. And notably, among his critics, it includes some top conservative voices like Tucker Carlson. Right? And actually, since this crisis began, Carlson has been incredibly vocal about his opposition to the U.S. supporting Israel in a war with Iran. I'm even writing a newsletter last week where he went as far as to claim that Trump was complicit in the act of war because of the long-standing military alliance between the two countries. Right? And then implying that the Trump administration's involvement in this crisis goes against the America First message. With that, then unsurprisingly getting a ton of backlash from other conservative figures who accuse Carlson of being a fake Trump supporter. And that is you also had Trump himself responding in several places. Right? And in an interview with The Atlantic, he was asked to respond to critics like Carlson who had argued that his actions go against the America First platform, with Trump responding there, "Well, considering that I'm the one that developed America First and considering that the term wasn't used until I came along, I think I'm the one that decides that. For those people who say they want peace, you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon." Right? And there, I'll just say, a quick aside, it is just simply untrue that Trump came up with America First. It literally first emerged during the original nativist movement of the 1850s and then was popularized by Woodrow Wilson over a century ago. But then, back to the story at hand, despite Trump's remarks, you had Carlson continuing to repeatedly defend his stance. And yesterday, he doubled down again during Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, implying that the U.S. support of Israel in a war with Iran goes against the America First message.
But the point is, if you think that saying, hey, let's focus on my country where I was born, where my family's been for hundreds of years, that was the promise of the last election, please do it.
But then Carlson going on to attack his former colleagues at Fox News and Rupert Murdoch, calling Fox News disgraceful, claiming the network has a long history of promoting wars that don't help the United States and accusing them of spreading propaganda. Though regarding Trump, he also made it clear that he still strongly supports the president in general.
I actually really love Trump. I think he's a deeply humane, kind person. And I am saying this because I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire. But it's also going to end, I believe, Trump's presidency and effectively end it.
So despite Tucker's proclamation of undying love for Dear Leader was not happy with Tucker. With him writing on Truth Social, somebody please explain to kooky Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. But then, in an unexpected move, probably one of the most die-hard Trump supporters in the world, Marjorie Taylor Greene, came out and actually defended Carlson, with her writing in a post on X that he is one of her favorite people and that they both believe the same things, and arguing foreign wars, intervention, regime change put America last, kill innocent people, are making us broke, and will ultimately lead to our destruction. That's not kooky. That's what millions of Americans voted for. It's what we believe is America first. Right? And the fact that she directly referenced Trump's post there, that's really significant because it is very rare, if not entirely unheard of, for her to explicitly buck the president. Where stands also not the biggest surprise. I mean, last week she put out a very lengthy post where she said anyone slobbering for the U.S. to become fully involved in the Israel-Iran war is not America first / MAGA. And mad is she's also not a lone voice out there. With Joe Rogan regular Dave Smith saying that he made a mistake by voting for Trump. He even called for his impeachment. You also had Candace Owens taking aim at the president, writing, Donald Trump just completely fractured his base, and he did it for the very neocons who minted the Never Trump movement. Truly unbelievable. Though again, that is not the universal reaction. This is a divide. This is a fracture among the base. And in fact, there's some recent polling from just a few days ago of specifically Trump voters. And there, they found the answer to the question, do you support or oppose the United States taking its own direct military action, if necessary, to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons? That 35% strongly supported, 37% somewhat supported, only 9% somewhat opposed, 10% strongly opposed, and 8% didn't know. Right, so a divide in his base, but still more supporting. And then just to add an unscientific poll into the mix, I asked on the community tab this morning what y'all's thoughts were. And we had 5% strongly supporting, 10% somewhat supporting, 18% somewhat opposing, and 67% strongly opposed. With a top comment there reading, if Trump gave a shit about this, maybe he shouldn't have dissolved the Iran nuclear agreement to begin with. Also, I thought he was the no-war president. But hey, for now, we're gonna have to wait to see how this plays out. And in the meantime, let me know your thoughts in those comments down below. And then you've got more news coming up in just a minute. But first, I used to think cowboy boots were for ranchers, country singers, or just guys going through a very specific kind of divorce. But hey, turns out today's sponsor proved that they're also for people like me who just want to look good without bleeding from the heel. Because after my first pair of Tecovas, I got it, right? These boots, they don't just look good, they feel earned. Tecovas boots are built different. Every pair is handmade in 200 plus steps using premium cowhide and exotic leathers. It's kind of like a boot in a luxury car had a baby. In mine, they're Cartwright and Scotchgo, which not only, do they look better with age, they tell a story the more that I wear them. And the best part is there's no break-in period, right? These boots, they're soft, supportive, and they're ready out of the box. No blisters, no limp, no cowboy waddle. And I wear mine with jeans, chinos. Hell, I'd probably wear them with a suit if someone invited me to a fancy barbecue. And hey, if you're lucky enough to live near a Tecovas store, go. They've got free drinks, free boot shines, and actual boot experts to help you find your perfect fit. You can even personalize your pair with branding or leather stamping, which is both rugged and unnecessarily cool. So hey, stop playing dress up and start stepping up. Just click that link or scan the QR code to grab your pair from Tecovas. But then, to switch gears from that to other news, the Trump Organization just announced the launch of a cell phone company, but here's the thing. It is somehow even sketchier than it sounds. And so where I'll start is just with the official website for Trump Mobile, where you see that the service will cost $47.45 a month, a reference to Trump serving as the 45th and 47th US president. And they say that it comes with a number of benefits, including unlimited talk, text, and data, calls with over 100 countries, and it doesn't require a credit check or contract. Though then notably, under a bullet point boasting unlimited texting, text away, no limits, you had a footnote clarifying unlimited texting may be subject to data limits. But then beyond that, the Trump Mobile plan claims that it'll offer roadside assistance provided by Drive America and telehealth services that include 24/7 access to healthcare professionals, mental health services, and pharmacy benefits. Although it's unclear if the health services will be included in the $47.45 price tag. Right, because while you have Axios reporting that the telemedicine partnership will be provided at no additional cost, the website doesn't appear to say that, which is also something you saw outlets like Time noting, and then further adding that the telehealth services will be offered through a third-party partnership with Doctegrity. Doctegrity normally costs a minimum of $29 a month, and it's unclear from the website if that will be covered for Trump Mobile subscribers. But then, in regards to general coverage, you have the Trump Mobile site claiming that it'll offer the same coverage as the 3 nationwide phone service carriers, and the site then adding that Trump Mobile will work with most major phones, so customers will be able to use a SIM card with their existing phone when they make the switch. But then also, if that doesn't work, the service will offer a full lineup of brand new devices available in the Trump Mobile store. With that said, currently there's just one, a gold-toned smartphone called the T1 that's on pre-order for $499, and it appears to have its name and an American flag engraved on the back, with the site claiming that it's made in the US and will be available in September. But then, notably there, we've seen numerous experts and even conservative outlets saying that it is functionally impossible to make the phone in the US, with them noting that the US simply doesn't have the necessary infrastructure to build the product, especially at the low price point that Trump Mobile is selling it for. And so you have analysts widely agreeing that, ironically, it'll likely have to be made in China. And even had Eric Trump, who runs the Trump Organization's day-to-day operations with his brother Don Jr., seemingly acknowledging that the phones can't be made in the US.
You can build these phones in the United States. Our customer service is in the United States. It's in St. Louis, Missouri. We can add more functionality. We can do it cheaper. We can do it better. And eventually, all the phones can be built in the United States of America. We have to bring manufacturing back here.
Right, maybe like you just did, a lot of people, they picked up that eventually part, claiming that he appeared to be walking back his initial claim that these phones can be built in the US right now. Though I will say, that wasn't the only comment that Eric got heat for.
And Trump Mobile is going to revolutionize cell phones, mobile calling. We're going to do it better. We're going to do it safer. We're going to have more functionality, more features. And it's going to be cheaper, $47 a month.
Right, but there you had a lot of people and outlets noting that the $47.45 plan actually appears to be more more expensive than similar plans from established carriers. And so, for example, Verizon's budget offering Visible, it sells an unlimited talk, text, data, and hotspot plan for $25 a month, while Mint Mobile's annual unlimited plan costs just $30 a month. So I guess, who knows, maybe Trump's 5G, it's filled with more freedom. But also, right, jokes aside, we've seen a lot of tech people noting that the Trump mobile website is very sloppy and confusing. For example, CNET noting that in addition to a lot of basic errors and typos, when it comes to the T1 phone itself, quote, the new device has a specs list that doesn't make sense. Noting that normally processing power is a key selling point, but for some reason there isn't a processor listed at all under the processor and RAM section of the Trump mobile site. Also, it appears that the specs for storage and memory are mixed up, and then the screen specs appear to reference a kind of display that just doesn't exist, which is why you had the outlet and many others saying it's a pretty big red flag if they can't even properly list basic product information. But then also, beyond all the potential issues and contradictions that have been raised, one of the most serious concerns about this latest venture have been the ethical implications. Right, because like with so many Trump-related projects, the president's direct connection is a bit murky and confusing. Right, because specifically what you see here is that the Trump organization itself announced the move, with the Trump mobile website issuing a disclaimer that explicitly says Trump Mobile, its products and services are not designed, developed, manufactured, distributed, or sold by the Trump organization or any of their respective affiliates or principals, with it then adding that instead an entity titled T1 Mobile LLC is using Trump's name under a licensing deal, which I will say, if you are even remotely familiar with Trump world, a licensing deal isn't all that uncommon. Right? I mean, during his campaign, Trump used a similar structure to sell products like Trump-branded Bibles, sneakers, and a cologne that used his name through a paid license, but were distributed and sold by a third party outside the Trump family business. And those deals, they've been incredibly lucrative for him. I mean, according to new financial disclosures that Trump filed on Friday, the president reported that he had made more than $8 million from various licensing agreements in 2024. Though I will say, very notably, that is a small fraction, a little drop in the bucket of the total $600 million in income that he reported from a combination of cryptocurrency, golf properties, and lucrative foreign licensing deals, among other things. And keep in mind, that's just for 2024. It does not include any of the income that he's made from his various ventures since assuming office again. And so then with all that, right now, it's not immediately clear how Trump himself is going to directly profit from this new mobile licensing deal while he's in office. Right? Because his 2025 disclosures aren't out, and so we can't see how much of the Trump organization and its many ventures he is divested from. But regardless, his family will certainly reap the profits, meaning that he also will once he leaves office. Which is why you then have many experts raising ethics concerns about the various Trump organization licensing deals and other branded merchandise agreements. So with the Trump mobile situation, you have people saying, one, you have the argument that even if he's not seeing the money in his hand now, he eventually will. Plus, his family's enriching itself off of his position of power. And two, you have many saying this presents a conflict of interest, or with reports noting that Trump Mobile is entering a crowded space that just so happens to be regulated by the president's appointees, and saying the T1 brand on its phone is owned by the Trump organization, effectively putting the Trump family in a manner of competition with the likes of Apple and Samsung, both of which the president has threatened to tariff heavily, with then others accusing Trump of functionally fixing the market that he's competing in and using the power of the presidency to jack up competitor prices. But then next up from that today, we need to talk about the right-wing reaction to those horrible Minnesota shootings, especially responses like that from Senator Mike Lee. Because as we talked about, Saturday morning, a man visited the homes of two Democratic Minnesota state lawmakers and shot them, with the alleged assassin, Vance Belter, killing Melissa Hortman and her husband and wounding John Hoffman and his wife. And according to police, Belter had a hit list with dozens of other targets, all or most of whom were Democrats. And that is, you had credible reports saying that he once registered as a Republican, supported Donald Trump, gave homophobic and transphobic sermons, passionately opposed abortion, and had Planned Parenthood on his kill list. And so in short, the available evidence generally seemed to point in one direction, right? That this was a right-wing, politically motivated assassination. But from the earliest moments as the news trickled out, you had the online bullshit machine churning out a narrative suggesting the exact opposite. With you seeing, for example, Jason Robertson claiming that both Hortman and Hoffman voted with Republicans last week to remove illegal immigrants from Medicaid, which is only true of Hortman, but not of Hoffman. With him adding, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, with a gif of a person winking. With then both Fox News and the New York Post amplifying that connection, implying that Hortman was targeted for breaking with the Democrats. And that narrative then gained more traction after the Minnesota State Patrol posted a photo of the suspect's vehicles with stacks of No Kings flyers on a seat, which, as they made pretty clear, was meant to warn people that the shooter, who at the time was still at large, might attack one of the protests. But instead, you had many on social media taking it as proof that he was actually sympathetic to the protests. And then when Belter's name got leaked online, you had people digging into his past and finding what they believed to be more evidence that he was a Democrat, right? Namely, that he was appointed to a state workforce development board in 2016 by the Democratic governor and then reappointed by the current Democratic governor, Tim Walz. But as officials have pointed out, the board has dozens of members and there are over 130 such advisory councils in the state government. And so members, they wouldn't be likely to have meaningful access to the governor. Though that, it definitely didn't stop social media users and right-wing media outlets from simply referring to the suspect as a Walz appointee or associate of Walz. With some examples of the posts being things like, so a Tim Walz appointee with No Kings flyers in his car went on a shooting spree today and murdered and injured lawmakers, holy shit. Others cranking it up a notch, posting, did Tim Walz activate an assassin against a political rival who voted against his plan to give illegal immigrants free healthcare? Within the top comment there being, maybe it's time Kash Patel and Pam Bondi bring Tim Walz in to ask him some questions about what went on in Minnesota. And then of course, I mean, what would a conspiracy theory even be without Elon Musk? With Musk throwing his 2 cents in, writing, the far left is murderously violent. You know, the bullshit, it didn't stop there. It oozed its way into the halls of Congress with, for example, Senator Bernie Moreno from Ohio posting, the degree to which the extreme left has become radical, violent, and intolerant is both stunning and terrifying. As well as Senator Mike Lee from Utah writing things like, Marxism is a deadly mental illness, and this is what happens when Marxists don't get their way. And sharing a photo of the alleged shooter with a caption, Nightmare on Wall Street, apparently misspelling Tim Walz's name. And well, you know, you had many just disgusted with the whole wave of bullshit. You had Mike Lee's comments in particular striking a sensitive chord. For example, Jon Stewart just skewering him on The Daily Show last night.
I truly want to know why, in his mind, one death at the hands of an immigrant is worth $150 billion of border security, a militarization of American cities. Well, just the blue cities. I know the undocumented immigrants in red state fields are the good ones now suddenly. That and I guess Mar-a-Lago hospitality workers. But I want to know why those deaths in Minnesota are worth only a night of edgelord posting. No billions for mental health, no stopping illegal weapons trafficking, no nothing. We should ask him why.
And then separately, you had Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer directly calling out Lee on the floor.
I wish I didn't have to say this, but I was deeply disappointed and sickened to see a member of this chamber use the tragedy in Minnesota to take cheap political shots at the other side on social media. He should take down his posts immediately and apologize to the families of the victims.
And then finally, in addition to the politicians who went on TV to talk about this, you had Senator Tina Smith, who's from Minnesota, telling CNN she personally confronted Lee in the Senate hallway in between votes on Monday.
I went to him and I said, you know, your message on social media showed the image of the man who killed my friend. You need to take responsibility and accountability for what you are saying and doing out there in the social media world.
What did he have to say when you confronted him with that?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't think this is a person who's used to being confronted. He said, you know, how many times have we heard the words that go something like, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry if you didn't understand what I.
And in fact, after that confrontation, Smith's deputy chief of staff released a letter that they say they sent to Lee's office with it reading, is this how your team measures success? Using the office of U.S. Senator to post not just one, but a series of jokes about an assassination. Is that a successful day of work on Team Lee? And adding, I pray to God that none of you ever go through anything like this. I pray that Senator Lee and your office begin to see the people you work with in this building as colleagues and human beings. And I pray that if, God forbid, you ever find yourselves having to deal with anything similar, you find yourselves on the receiving end of the kind of grace and compassion that Senator Mike Lee could not muster. But ultimately, in response to all this, at least as of recording, Lee has just kind of kept silent, even when this journalist confronted him on Capitol Hill. But they're asking him whether he regrets his posts, whether he stands by them, and what he thought about his meeting with Tina Smith, all while he said nothing, stared straight ahead, and just kept walking. And then, while I was recording this, it appears he quietly deleted his controversial posts. You know, I will say, he's not alone there, right? When other bullshit promoters were asked about their bullshit, they kind of just hid behind the defense of, well, technically what I said wasn't a lie. Or with Jason Robertson telling NBC that his post was a factual statement. And for the other post I mentioned where someone appeared to suggest that Tim Walz activated the assassin, he said, I didn't accuse him of anything, I asked a question. And then when this News Nation reporter fact-checked Donald Trump Jr. in real time, he just kind of brushed it off like it was nothing.
The guy that committed those atrocities this weekend is a Democrat that worked for Tim Walz, that had the flyers about the No Kings thing in there.
Now, I'm not sure about that, by the way, from what I've seen. I think he voted for your dad and things like that from what I've seen.
I'll believe that when I see it.
But so yeah, I mean, we're in this situation where, I mean, it's Tuesday now. The facts of this story have been extensively reported, and yet the bullshit machine just seems completely unfazed. And then you've got even more news in just a minute, but first, you know, let's get real for a second. Online privacy, it's a nightmare. You buy a hoodie and next thing you know, 7,000 data brokers have everything about you. Your shoe size, your ex's name, even your weird salad dressing habit. And it's not just creepy, it's out of control. Like thousands of companies are collecting and selling your personal information without you even knowing. Your full name, email address, shopping history, family members, they know it all. And sure, you can ask them to delete it, but good luck. I mean, it's a paper chase that could take forever. And that is why I've teamed up with today's sponsor, Incogni. They make privacy easy. You sign up, you give them permission, and boom, they handle the mess for you. They contact data brokers, file removal requests, and push through any rejections so you don't have to. Plus, Incogni now has unlimited and family unlimited unlimited plans with custom removals, meaning if your information shows up on those creepy people search websites, Incogni's got your back. And it's simple. You sign up, you authorize them, and when your information pops up on those sketchy sites, flag it with Incogni and let custom removals handle the rest. Your personal data shouldn't be up for sale, so scan that QR code or head to incogni.com/DeFranco and use code DeFranco to get 60% off. That's incogni.com/DeFranco, code DeFranco to take your personal data off the market. But then next up from that in the news, the American Bar Association is now suing the White House for attacking their profession. You've got the nation's largest organization of lawyers now accusing Donald Trump of using, quote, the vast powers of the executive branch to coerce lawyers and law firms to abandon clients, causes, and policy positions he doesn't like. And the ABA is largely referring to several executive orders that Trump signed targeting law firms known for representing or employing people on his shit list. In these orders, they not only canceled these firms as federal contracts, they also canceled their security clearances, locked them out of federal buildings, and barred them from even speaking to various government officials. With then some firms striking deals to avoid or get out of this punishment, offering tens of millions of dollars worth of pro bono work in exchange, which then, of course, has been seen by many as just cowardice and capitulation, and in some cases leading top partners to quit and take their talents elsewhere. And that is, firms that have actually stood up, they have time and time again won court rulings in their favor. But that doesn't mean that there's no impact, and you have the ABA claiming that the president's policy is working as designed, saying that the president's law firm intimidation policy has, by design, cast a deep chill over the legal profession, with them noting that some firms, they've stopped taking on work that may have them clashing with the federal government. They also pointed to reporting from outlets like the Washington Post that found that Biden-era officials and certain nonprofits are having a hard time finding lawyers to represent them, which is why they're filing this lawsuit, seeking a more sweeping ruling against the White House's actions rather than just one executive order targeting one law firm. With the ABA's president, William Bay, saying, while some firms are now protected by specific court orders, there's thousands of lawyers who are not party to those cases and don't have the resources to withstand that intimidation, and we're standing up for them. But then with all that, as far as what's happening on the other side, you had White House spokesperson Harrison Fields calling the lawsuit clearly frivolous and adding, the president has always had discretion over which contracts the government enters into and who receives security clearances, and saying his exercise of these core executive functions cannot be dictated by the ABA, a private organization, or the courts, and saying the administration looks forward to ultimate victory on this issue. So now, while we're going to have to wait to see how all that plays out, I think it's also important to know that this is not the first time that the administration has clashed with the ABA. Right? In the past, they've accused the association of being unfair to conservatives. And so in April, for example, you had the Justice Department barring its attorneys from participating in the group's events, which had been normal for years. And the Trump administration actually revoked the ABA's access to non-public information on judicial nominees, with Attorney General Pam Bondi saying at the time that the ABA had, quote, lost its way, and we do not believe it serves as a fair arbiter of judicial nominees. And so again, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens, but I will say, separate from the news, this part is just my opinion. Based off of what we've seen from Trump since he became president again, it really does seem like this is all part of a revenge campaign. It's really just a question of, is it a legal revenge campaign? As well as, even if it is illegal, can you still do it to the point that it just dissuades people from ever wanting to challenge you or work with people that you don't want them to work for? And that last question is probably the most important one because, once again, the law firms have been winning in court over and over. But then shifting gears from that to a different kind of news as we begin to wind down today's show, I want to talk to you about Peter Mutabazi. Because Peter, he was born in a village on the border of Uganda and Rwanda. And they were rough for his entire childhood. I mean, he ran away from his parents' home at the age of 10 to escape an abusive situation, and he spent the next 5 years homeless. Peter's saying, life was really miserable because of poverty. I didn't feel hope. I didn't see it. For me, hoping was lying to myself. And he added that street kids were treated like stray animals in Uganda. And so he learned how to survive, helping people carry their groceries in exchange for something to eat. But then the day came that someone saw Peter as more than a stray. I'm saying that one day while he was doing his usual routine, helping people with groceries, he came upon a man who was different from the rest. A man who helped Peter for a year and a half, and every time he brought groceries, he made sure that Peter got something to eat. And eventually, this guy, he sits Peter down and he offered to send him to boarding school, with Peter saying that that act of kindness, it changed his life forever. With Peter then going on to earn a bachelor's degree, and he moved to London to study crisis management before moving to the US in 2002 to study theology. And since then, he has paid it forward. He has dedicated his career to child advocacy organizations. In 2006, he actually started Compassion International, and now he's a senior advocate at World Vision. Still, he wanted to do more, saying, when I came to the United States, I really struggled seeing how much food was thrown away when I lost members of my family for a lack of beans and potatoes. This person shared with me that there are kids in the United States that had no food, and he explained more about fostering. With Maddie, I was like, wait a minute, I feel like I can relate to these kids. I thought I ought to do something for others. Well, at first, he was concerned that he wasn't qualified because, he's single, but after some research, he realized that's just not true, and he enrolled in a licensing class for foster parents. With him fostering his first kid in 2017, and since then, he has fostered fostered 47 different kids, with him saying that his ultimate goal is to always reunite kids with their families, and adding, "You're giving an opportunity for the parents to go through whatever they need to, and my belief is that the kids should go back to their parents. I will foster until the child has somewhere to go," and adding, "If there is no one else, I want to be their final dad." And he is a man that talks the talk and walks the walk. He has become the final dad to 3 kids already, and he's in the process of adopting another 3. And his first adoption was a kid by the name of Anthony in 2019, and Anthony came to Peter a year earlier at 11 years old, and it was only supposed to be for a weekend. But then, before long, Peter learned that Anthony just didn't have anywhere else to go, and Anthony, who's now 19, says that he knew right away that he wanted Peter to be his dad, saying, "I just had this gut feeling. He has been there by my side, helping to support me in finding myself." With Peter then going on to adopt 2 biological siblings, Luke and Isabella, in 2023 after fostering them for years. And now he's planning to adopt the 3 kids that he's currently fostering, with one of them being Luke and Isabella's little sister, with Peter saying, "I always want to keep siblings together. It lessens the trauma." And so with those 6 and all the other kids he's fostered, there just seems to be something special about Peter. Because even seeing the executive director of the foster agency that he works with saying, "I've had kids that Peter is probably the only person that could reach this kid." He seems to have a knack for getting kids, figuring out what they need, and then providing that. It's a life passion for Peter, and you can see that in his work. And so for that compassion and that dedication and just being someone for someone that has no one, you are our BAMF of the day, sir. But that is where your show is going to end today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow, because remember, I got a brand new show for you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Love you. Mean it. Bye.